Chair Pfaff, you may begin.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. It's the March 11th, 2024 Burlingame City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held in person and using the Zoom webinar format. This meeting is also being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website. Please note that we are not accepting remote public comment during commission meetings. We ask the public either attend the meetings in person or comment or send an email to burlingamecomment@burlingame.org or public comment at burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes. Hopefully we're going to do 3 minutes, customarily allowed for verbal comments. Item number 2, roll call. The record should note that 6 members of the commission are present this evening. Commissioner Say is absent. Item number 3, request for AB 2249, remote participation. There are no commissioners participating remotely. Approval of minutes. We have meeting minutes to review and approve this evening from February 12th, 2024, the regular Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments, changes, discussion? May I have a motion?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 12th.
And a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thanks. Roll call vote.
Roll call, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Horan,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid.
Aye.
Commissioner Shores.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lowenthal.
Aye.
And Chair Pfaff.
Aye, thank you. So moving right along. Approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, and regarding recusals, I will be recusing from item, let's see, 9A, thank you. 36 Bloomfield, as I live in the zone where I cannot participate. Okay.
Yeah,
Brett?
I will be recusing from item 8 consent calendar because my firm has done a report on that property in the.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shore will be recusing from item 8A. All right, so public comments, non-agenda. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission meeting agenda may do so during this period. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency meeting law prohibits the commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. And do we have any members of the public attending this evening in person who wish to speak on any item that is not on the agenda? Okay, and do we have any public comment emails that came in?
No public comment emails that are not for an agendized item.
All right, great, thanks. On to study items. There are no study items for review. Agenda item 8, consent calendar. Do we have any consent?
Yeah.
Yes, oh yeah, this first one. So, yep, he's leaving. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and/or action is requested by an applicant, member of the public, or commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. So this evening, we're here to discuss or to consent item 8 and 8A 124 Occidental Avenue. So I'm wondering if any of my fellow commissioners would like to pull that item. Okay, are there any members of the public who would like to pull it? Okay, then.
No emails either.
Sorry? No.
Just for the record, no emails.
All right, thank you. I'm looking for a motion then on that item.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar, including item 8A.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you very much. Moved by Commissioner Schmidt, seconded by Commissioner Lowenthal. May I have a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Horan,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lowenthal,
Aye.
and Chair Foff.
Aye. Thank you very much. So now we're moving to the item on which I cannot participate. So I'm going to have my colleague.
Okay, item 9A, 36 Bloomfield Road. If you are the applicant and are attending the meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand so we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant is proposing first floor additions and a new second story addition to the existing dwelling at 36 Bloomfield Road. The applicant is requesting approval of a special permit for a 70 square foot second story balcony at the rear of the house, where a special permit is required for any second floor balcony. The proposed balcony is set back 10 foot 3 inches from the side property line, where 8 feet minimum is required. The Planning Commission first reviewed the application as a design review study item on November 13th, 2023. After noting areas of concern, the commission referred the application to a design review consultant. Included with the staff report is the design reviewer's analysis and recommendation dated February 13th, 2024. Excuse me. The design reviewer notes that the project has come a long way and believes it would fit into the neighborhood well with the revised. The applicant submitted a response letter dated February 1st, 2024, and revised plans dated March 1st, 2024 to address the Planning Commission's comments. Staff notes that a previously requested application for a special permit for plate height has been eliminated by revising the first and second floor plate heights to comply with code standards. In summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a first and second story addition to an existing single unit dwelling and a special permit for a second floor balcony. Criteria for design review and special permits are included in the staff report together with suggested finding. Any action by the Planning Commission should include specific findings supporting the decision and should be affirmed by resolution of the Planning Commission. The reasons for any action should be stated clearly for the record. The applicant is in attendance to answer questions, but first I'm available if there are questions of staff.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. My name is Nassim and our architect Azadeh. I'm the homeowner. And we really appreciate actually the recommendation to speak with the design consultant, Randy. He provided fantastic insights that we feel like really elevated the design of the house and really kind of gave it all the final design details that we were looking for. So it was very, very helpful. And we're here to answer any questions or open to any other suggestions you might have.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Yes. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Schmidt.
So I'm not seeing any window details in the set. Are the windows going to be set back from the face of the stucco? Or is there trim around the stucco? The rendering kind of says one thing and the elevations another.
Yeah, the thing is happened the first floor, the big window that we have, that is it's one
Right.
side, that's because we want to, that we reduce the mess there. But all of the windows to be recessed windows, means that we sit 4 or 6 inches inside the wall, not flush with the exterior.
Okay. And then the rafter tails that have been added, are they actually rafter tails or are they some sort of bracket? Because the rendering kind of suggests one thing and the elevation suggests something else.
We try to, is that continue the rafter, not the custom rafter. We try to continue the structure after.
Okay. And then with the second floor framing, how is that gonna get to the outside top plate when you have then the roof starting right there? There's in the section, it would suggest that you've got 12 inches of structure between the floors, which is probably what you're gonna need.
Mhm.
But then it doesn't show how it's gonna terminate at the edges, and I'm worried that it's not gonna get there, given the details that I'm seeing.
For the, you talk about the ceiling joist or floor
Yes.
joist?
Well, for between the first floor and the second floor, the floor joist there.
Yeah, we have 14, we keep 14 inches there for the structural, means that.
Right.
For sure, we don't have any structural design now, but for sure, we keep it 14 inches more for the structural design. But for sure, we provided more detail when we want to submit to the building department.
Right, so if that's bearing on the top sill plate from the first floor and the rafters are only 2x8 maybe, you've got 6 inches of floor joist that's gonna pop up above the roof.
Oh, I see. I see. I think that for sure I'm not sure again, but the structure engineer, but for sure we want to, maybe we don't want to touch I don't want to reduce the ceiling height for
Mhm.
the first floor, but maybe I'm not sure that we have some notch there or something that we can keep the ceiling joist, means that we don't want to pop out here because it's not, I don't want to see some bugs that go outside of the house, for sure. Thank you.
But normally structural is a building department function, but I'm not actually seeing how you're gonna pull that off.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned that it will actually impact the way that your roof is gonna work on the sides as you try to put the floor joists in on the second floor. So something that I think needs to be looked at.
For sure,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Commissioner Camarado?
Yeah, so I'm not seeing any exterior lighting on the house itself. So are you planning on having some exterior lights?
Yes, for sure, we have two, but again, it's about the owners, but we think about that, we have two lighting in the front, in the entry, that we have two in the front, but rest of them in the back of the house for the balcony and for the sliding door that go outside of.
Okay. Could you kindly put that on the details for
For
us?
sure.
Thank you.
Can I just add on to that?
Yes, sir.
And please confirm with our Burlingame lighting code, because exterior lights are to shine down, not out. So there's certain fixtures that work and a lot of fixtures that don't.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? No? All right. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak on this item, or did we receive any public comment emails?
No public comment emails.
Seeing no other public coming to the podium, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have any comments?
Yeah, just appreciate the changes. Much better project than it was when it was first submitted. I like the window design is much better, including the large front window. And the pushback of the front entry really made a difference. Before it was one flat plane, so I appreciate that as well.
Thanks.
I'm okay with the second floor balcony. I'm not a huge fan of second floor balconies, but because it complies, I'm okay with that.
I think the project is nice. I think that they've done a lot of good work on it. I'd like to see a little more detail on the lights. I'm okay with the second floor balcony. And I think they should probably revisit what Commissioner Schmid mentioned to make sure that that roof line is going to work.
Personally, I like the project as well. Echoing Commissioner Horan, I think it's a much improved project. However, I do understand the details that are missing. So the question is, do we continue this or do we push this forward
Or consent.
or consent?
And you could pull it if you don't like the details.
I think it's come a long way. For me, most of the elevations are kind of flat because of the inset window treatment. That's not one of my favorites, and in a project like this that is largely a box, there's not a lot of interest to it. um, there's an opportunity with that front window and the arch. If you actually laid that, you would get a whole nother level of detail there that would make that window even more so. My concern is that's a bedroom window, not a living space, so it's weird to have a big window there, but I think it could move forward. I just think that there's risks downstream.
Maybe put it on the consent calendar, and then if we see detail or don't see details, we can pull it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I can make that motion, I suppose. I'll move, to move this to the consent calendar with the, finding for a special permit for the second story balcony and as per the staff report.
I'll second that.
Yeah. And can we get a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Horan,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Shores,
Aye.
and Acting Chair Lowenthal.
Aye. Any action by the planning commission is appealable to the city council within 10 days of the planning commission's action.
This one isn't appealable.
One is not appealable.
Right.
We're pushing it to.
Pushing it to next meeting.
Screen.
That's right. All right. Well, then we can let in our
Chair.
chair back in. Thank you. Thank you very much. Back.
All right, so now we are at item 9, regular action item, 9B, actually 9B, 1200 to 1340 Old Bayshore Highway. If you are the applicant and are attending the meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
I had a video call with the developer a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, thank you.
I did as well.
All right. Nobody else, okay. And we have no recusals, I don't think. So let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Beggs, and I'm a contract principal planner for the city of Burlingame, and I'm pleased to present the item before you tonight, which is the 1200 to 1340 Old Bayshore Highway project. Next slide.
Excuse me, Kelly, can you, I don't know, it's just,
You're having trouble hearing me?
yes, better.
There we go. All right. I'll start my presentation by introducing the staff and consultant team involved in the effort. Kevin Gardner, Community Development Director, Ruben Hurin, Planning Manager, Catherine Kalon has been the senior planner on this project. Martin Kwan and Andrew Wong, senior civil engineers with the Public Works Department. The city attorneys include Michael Gina, the city attorney, and Scott Spansale, the assistant city attorney. Christine Krall is also here tonight, outside counsel with Jarvis Fay. And then Paul Mitchell with ESA is also here tonight to answer questions related to the California Environmental Quality Act. Next slide. All right. The project has been under review since 2022 and has appeared before the Planning Commission several times. The application was initially filed in March of 2022, and the Planning Commission and City Council reviewed the application at an April 2022 study session. In August of 2022, the Planning Commission held a CEQA scoping meeting, and in February of 2023, the commission provided comments on the project at a design review and pre-application development agreement study session. In October of 2023, the Planning Commission held a draft EIR public comment hearing to review and provide comments on the project's environmental review. And that brings us to tonight's hearing, where the commission will consider a recommendation to council on the project entitlements, the final EIR, and the development agreement. Next slide. To orient us, I'll start by describing the project site and location. The 12-acre project site is located at 1200 to 1340 Old Bayshore Highway. It's bounded to the south by Airport Boulevard, to the east by the San Francisco Bay, to the north by office buildings and service parking lots, and to the west by Old Bayshore Highway. Easton Creek runs west to east to the bay through the center of the site. And the site is currently occupied by a mix of office, restaurant, and retail buildings, a hotel, and surface parking lots. The Bay Trail terminates at the south end of the project site and resumes at the north end. The site is designated Bayfront Commercial by the general plan, and it's part of the Bayfront Commercial Zoning District, the BFC district. Next slide. So I'll cover the project details at a fairly high level during this presentation, as the applicant will provide a very detailed presentation after staff's presentation. The project includes 3 11-story office or research and development buildings. The total office R&D square footage would be 1,415,000 square feet. Tenant improvements will ultimately determine the end use, and that could range from an overall building program of 100% R&D to 100% professional office, or a combination of those two categories. The center and south buildings contain 2 restaurants that total to 5,000 square feet. And there are 2 10 to 10.5 story parking structures with 3,400 parking spaces. The site plan includes a variety of amenities, including a new Bay Trail segment, publicly accessible open space, and other public amenities, including plazas, a public restroom, and an airplane viewing deck. Next slide. This slide presents the proposed site plan. Starting from the north parking structure includes 1,632 parking spaces. And then moving 1 building down is the north building, which includes 620,700 square feet of office and R&D space. The center building includes 437,200 square feet of office space. The south parking structure is next and contains 1,768 parking spaces. And lastly, the south building contains 362,000 square feet of space. As I mentioned before, the center and the south buildings contain the project's 2 restaurants, and those are located towards the rear corners of the site and oriented towards the Bay Trail and Easton Creek. The project's floor area ratio is 2.71, which is allowable with approval of a special permit for Tier 3 FAR and community benefits. Lot coverage is at 45%, falling below the maximum lot coverage of 60% allowed by the zoning code. Next slide. This slide shows the proposed elevations. The top elevation, you're looking at the buildings from the bay. So from left to right, you have the south, center, and north buildings with the 2 parking structures first. And then the bottom elevation shows the buildings from left to right. We're looking at them in the opposite order from Old Bayshore Highway. The north parking structure is 113 feet and 10 inches in height. The north building is 214.5 feet tall. Center building, same height at 214.5. And then the south parking structure is 104 feet and 10 inches tall. And lastly, the south building is 210.5 feet in height. The project's entitlement requests a special permit for building height greater than 65 feet, and the findings for that permit are enclosed in your staff report. Next slide. This slide shows the project's overall landscaping plan. The landscaping is exceeding the code requirement of 20% site landscaping with 26.2 site landscaping. The plan includes a planting palette, which includes understory planting with drought-tolerant, native, and climate-adapted woody shrubs, perennials, and grasses. Tree species include coast live oak and southern live oak, western rosebud, white alder, California buckeyes, and Brisbane box. 195 new trees would be planted, all of which are 24-inch box size or greater. Next slide. This slide shows proposed improvements to Old Bayshore Highway and the frontage along the project site. So in addition to the improvements described in previous slides, the project would make modifications and improvements to Old Bayshore Highway, including a new Class 4 bike lane, 2 passenger loading zones, new sidewalk, curb, gutter, street lining, new signalized intersection and crosswalks at the entrance to the northern parking structure, and then reconfiguration of the US 101 off-ramp Old Bayshore Highway intersection, which is subject to Caltrans approval, new crosswalks at the Airport Boulevard Old Bayshore Highway intersection, and then signal optimization of local intersections surrounding the project. Next slide. So the requested entitlements for the project include a commercial design review permit, a special permit for height, a special permit for 2.71 FAR, a vesting tentative map, development agreement, and EIR certification. I just want to take a moment to quickly describe the vesting tentative map. The existing site includes 13 parcels totaling approximately 12 acres. The vesting tentative map will modify that configuration to define 8 new parcels. The project does require 2 special permits, one for height, as I mentioned, and one for Tier 3 FAR. Tier 3 FAR requires provision of a minimum of 3 community benefits, which I will show on the next slide. It's a bit small, but the applicant will talk about it in detail. As you can see, the proposed project is providing an array of community benefits, including sea level rise infrastructure, climate change measures, habitat restoration, a contribution to the Broadway grade separation project, event space, public parks, public plazas, transportation improvements, and land dedication. The community benefits proposed are in excess of the Tier 3 requirements, which leads to the next topic that I would like to discuss, which is the development agreement. Next slide. Thank you. So the definition of a development agreement is a contract between a city and a property owner, and it's used for larger phased projects to lock in land use regulations and to set a duration in exchange for negotiated community benefits. The development agreement typically extends the expiration of entitlements, and that extended expiration period is referred to as a term. The term for this project, as proposed, is a 10-year term, and that's with a possibility of 2 5-year extensions based on the applicant meeting certain construction milestones. So 20 years should the construction milestones be met. The project under consideration this evening does include a phasing proposal, which is proposed to be split into the northern building and parking structure, the center building and parking structure, and then the south building, not necessarily in that particular order. There is flexibility. Next slide. So the DA for this project includes an overall requirement regarding phasing that the community benefits associated with each phase are delivered and timed with those development pieces. In addition, there are specific phasing requirements, including the early delivery of a complete bay trail through the project site, within 3 years of all required approvals. And that does include approval by the BCDC. Because of its location within the shoreline band, the project requires BCDC approval following the city. The improvements associated with Easton Creek must also be completed as part of Phase 1 or Phase 2, and that depends on the order of phasing which the applicant ultimately selects. Next slide. The community benefits associated with the DA include the following: a public plaza, 5.5 acres of publicly accessible space, and that space includes multiple amenities, including a nature play discovery area, shoreline exploration area, outdoor fitness area, public restrooms, seating, bike share, and drinking fountains. It also includes cultural arts and event spaces, shuttle service to serve the project site along Old Bayshore Highway with lay-by drop-offs, and that's part of the project's TDM plan as well. Sea level rise infrastructure exceeding the requirements of the code, which include raising the shoreline, bay trail, and park areas to a minimum elevation of 17 feet. And then lastly, contribution of $3.5 million towards the city's Broadway grade separation project to reduce traffic on Broadway. Next slide. So next I will speak to the project's environmental review. So the environmental review and the associated public process began with a notice of preparation and scoping in August through September of 2022. The Planning Commission held a scoping meeting on August 22nd of 2022, and the draft EIR was published a little more than a year later in September of 2023. It was circulated for a public comment from September 20th to November 9th of 2023. The Planning Commission also held a draft EIR public comment hearing on October 23rd of 2023. The final EIR, which responds to all public comments received on the EIR, was published on March 1st of this year and is attached to your staff report for review and recommendation this evening. Next slide. So I will provide an overview of the draft EIR findings on the next two slides. The project was found to have less than significant or no impact to the following resource categories, and that means that these did not require any mitigation measures. The topics are aesthetics, agriculture, forestry resources, energy, geology and soils, land use and planning, mineral resources, noise and vibration, population and housing, public services and recreation, transportation, and wildlife. Next slide, please. There were no significant and unavoidable impacts associated with the proposed project, but several resource areas did require mitigation to reduce impacts to less than significant levels. These resource topics include air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, and utilities and service systems. The project's mitigation monitoring and reporting program, also referred to as an MMRP, sets forth implementation for all of the mitigation measures identified in the draft EIR and specifies the timing and responsible parties to ensure implementation of the mitigation measures. The MMRP is adopted by the city as part of the EIR certification process. Next slide. Moving on to the final EIR. So the final EIR responds to all of those comments that are received on the draft EIR through the public review period. For this EIR, we received 16 comments total, 3 from public agencies and 13 from individuals. Comment topics centered on traffic and transportation, pedestrian and cyclist safety, public access and amenities, habitat enhancement, bird strike prevention, lighting, aesthetics, and building height and massing. All comments were responded to in writing in the final EIR, and no substantive issues were raised to cause recirculation or major revisions. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the action before you tonight, which includes adoption of 3 resolutions, which are recommendations to the City Council on EIR certification, project entitlements, and the development agreement. I think the Commission is aware, but to restate, the reason that the Commission's action tonight is to make a recommendation is that the DA is a legislative action which requires council approval, and the zoning code has a provision that requires all entitlements when part of one package to be considered by the highest review authority as a whole. Moving on to the next slide. So closing with next steps, the City Council will consider Planning Commission's recommendation at a project public hearing tentatively scheduled for April 1st, and then the second reading of the DA ordinance would occur on April 15th should the City Council approve the project. Staff and the consultant team are available to answer any questions that you have now, and the applicant will give a presentation following response to your questions.
Thank you. Do any of you have questions of Kelly?
I'll try one.
Yeah.
So the ownership changed since the original application, and then there's a proposed vesting map that
Yes.
from 13 parcels to 8. Could you just describe how we should think about those?
So the ownership change, I believe, the applicant can likely respond to. The vesting tentative map, right now, the parcelization as proposed has quite a few parcels that are arranged around the existing development on the site. Typically, cities do not allow projects to build on a property line. So the reason for a tentative map would be to reconfigure the site to make at least the map make sense for the proposed development. Does that answer your question? And then the ownership associated with the different phases, I think the applicant can likely speak.
I'll try the question again with the.
Okay.
And then how, if at all, does view preservation come into play with the development?
So the code does have a requirement on view corridors through the project site, and the project is meeting those. I believe the project is actually increasing the view corridors through the project site. In terms of view preservation, our CEQA document analyzed that from an informational perspective, and we can talk more about that as well. Public views are typically considered at a higher weight than private views.
I'm going to go just with one, but maybe it's not for you. I don't know. This has to do with the Caltrans, the issue with the that intersection where they're proposing a arrangement that is normally not a Caltrans acceptable. So I'm asking because in the case where Caltrans would not accept what they proposed, do you have any idea what the plan would be? Like, would it be reconfiguring parcels again then because of what you just mentioned?
It could be, should the Caltrans not approve the intersection design, the applicant would have to come up with a design that's acceptable to Caltrans.
Which could mean
Which
designing the
modify
project
Circulation, the site circulation and the driveway entrances, yes.
and potentially the project as well, like the buildings.
Want to answer, Catherine? You
Sure. Thank you. Chair Pfaff, yes, that's correct. So there is a condition of approval and the applicant knows that, the approval for Caltrans is required before building permit issuance. And should that not be accepted, the project would be revisited and the entitlements would come back for an amendment before this body and before City Council.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if I had anything else. No. Might be a developer question, so.
Okay.
That's it for Kelly? Okay, thank you. So is it developer coming next? Yes, okay.
Hello. I'm gonna try to share my screen and see if this works. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for that summary. Very helpful, articulately laid out a lot of items for your consideration. Thank you to the planning commissioners for being here, to city staff for your review of this project thus far. I'm Virginia Calkins. I'm with Divco West. I'm joined here tonight by Seth Bland of Divco, Ben of WRNS. Our partners at Woodstock Development and a slew of very talented interdisciplinary design team members. So when you ask hard-hitting questions, I'll be calling on those guys. So as Kelly laid out, we're here tonight to request your recommendation that the council certify the final EIR, which of note concludes the project has no significant and unavoidable environmental impacts, and also to approve the project entitlements, including the development agreement. This would allow us to move forward with the transformation of the Bayfront that we've been thinking about for the past 2.5, 3 years. As Kelly described, we were first in front of you in April 2022 in a joint session with council, again for the CEQA NOP in August of 2022, and then again in October 2023, the draft EIR. So we're here tonight to conclude that process. I'd like to spend a few minutes discussing our proposed design for Peninsula Crossing. First, a reminder of what the site looks like today. It's an area of Burlingame that the city targeted for redevelopment for good reason. Despite being adjacent to one of our region's greatest assets, the Bay, the site has no publicly available open space and remains largely paved. There's a creek bisecting the site that's hemmed in by hardscape. It is degraded, becoming a repository for garbage. What we envision instead is a dynamic bayfront realm, one that densifies the commercial activity, but also rewilds the site, removing hard paved surfaces. The result is something that links the Bay to the urban fabric of the city of Burlingame and welcomes families to explore. It's an adaptive and resilient urban space that includes 5.5 acres of publicly available open space where none exists today. And although tonight I'm going to be doing a little bit of talking, this project actually started mostly with and the design tonight reflects very good input from a huge number of members of the community, from this body, and from city staff. And so I want to go through a couple of the things that have changed since the project inception and talk through that input. First of all, the buildings began at the allowable 3.0 FAR. We downsized them by approximately 150,000 square feet. We narrowed the buildings. We pulled back the garage footprints from the bay shore, creating wider open space, wider view corridors. We designed the Bay Trail to be 20 feet wide for pedestrian and bicycle safety. We increased shoreline habitat area in dedicated locations, and we added new public amenities, including an airplane viewing platform and a picnic plaza. We'll go through some of those in more detail further in the presentation. From the project's inception, we heard clearly from the community about the importance of the Bay Trail. This is one of the few areas in the region that the Bay Trail literally stops. And so we've designed a trail that meanders along the shore. It becomes a vital social thread connecting new recreational programming and completing this broader trail network. But the Bay Trail, it's not only about the recreational opportunities of tomorrow. It also provides critical sea level rise protection for the next generation. We applaud the City of Burlingame for the leadership you have taken on sea level rise protection. We've taken this responsibility seriously, and we're investing significantly in raising the grade of the entire site and incorporating 17-foot high crest elevation shoreline infrastructure. Absent action, it's kind of wild. What you see on the left is the site completely inundated by water in only a matter of time. So without proactive measures, this is what we're facing. But we've taken not just an engineering approach to this, it's actually a regenerative approach to designing future infrastructure. It's one that incorporates nature rather than creating barricades and separating it. Infrastructure must be rethought and not address a single challenge. So here we've elegantly buried essentially protective levees underneath a vibrant park space. And this broad raised grade design also enables future adaptability. The natural systems actually become a form of infrastructure, with plants mitigating erosion, for example. Sea level rise is a massive, overwhelming global problem, and it's one that we think will only be addressed through individual, bold, incremental action. And that's why tonight we are proud to be committed to protecting the City of Burlingame. This is a diagram showing how far inland a 17-foot high crest elevation storm surge would reach. And so with our improvements, we're protecting a meaningful part of the city for generations to come. I'd next like to turn to another important form of infrastructure, which is transportation and connectivity. This site, we targeted it for a lot of reasons, but part of it is the location. We are right across from the 101 on an off-ramp, which is going to decrease the impact of cars on this site to overall city streets. We're also investing in a free publicly available shuttle that will run every 15 minutes, the short 7-minute ride to Millbrae, BART, and Caltrain. And then we're investing in a series of pedestrian and cyclist community improvements to encourage people to get to the site on wheels or on feet. Here's a view of that shuttle stop centrally located on the site. Overall, I would say we're taking a holistic approach to how to reduce the number of single occupancy vehicle trips. This includes the Transportation Demand Management Plan, which will incentivize biking, mode share, and public transit. It includes bicycle parking in the buildings and on the site, shower facilities, and publicly available water bottle filling stations, bike mechanical equipment, and a bike share. Again, really encouraging people to enjoy the weather that we have here and not drive in a car. The streetscape along Old Bayshore Highway importantly features a new protected bike lane, a natural planting strip, and a broad sidewalk. Peninsula Crossing, we envision it to be an active place of gathering and walking. And some people might be scientists power walking to go test their next great idea, and bird watchers might be meandering more slowly, but all enjoying this nature-based place. As part of our design process, we also performed traffic analysis of the full region with a level of service analysis. And we did this modeling the cumulative impact of regional project growth. And then as a result, we're proposing a series of intersection improvements, including signal timing and new geometries to optimize flow in the full region. In addition, as Kelly said, we're contributing monetarily to the city's crucial grade separation project. Zooming into our project site, we've included 3 signalized crosswalks placed mindfully in the context of nearby shuttle stops or other places where pedestrians may be coming from. Now let's cross that pedestrian overpass and take a walk through the site. The Southern Plaza at the corner of Airport Boulevard and Old Bayshore Highway serves as a welcome mat to the bay, connecting the community to the water. Today, this part of the site sort of drops off. There's a sharp change in grade and a retaining wall, further separating humans and nature. And so by bringing the plaza up to the grade of the intersection, we're blurring these lines between the urban and the natural. We're creating a public plaza that can host food trucks or markets, where park and cultural activities can become layers of simultaneity. The plaza surrounds a tidal marsh where native species are reintroduced, a natural buffer between the bay and the land. The Bay Trail curves around the marsh alongside, first coming along this stone amphitheater, which can host field trip gatherings or small concerts, then curving around the marsh alongside the building to the public cafe. And what we think of in Peninsula Crossing, it's not a place that's going to go dark at 5. It's going to be open and vibrant on evenings and weekends. Let's continue now. We'll walk north along the Bay Trail where we find a discovery play area for kids. The shoreline, it's a blending. It's not a border. A gravel beach allows for interaction with the water, with the tides. On the left is the parking garage, which includes 40 public parking stalls and the unglamorous but necessary elements of any successful public space, the bathrooms. One of the kind of joyous elements of this site is it's a particularly good vantage point for watching planes come in or depart. And so we put a public airplane viewing platform at the top level of the south parking garage. And as a side note, I've learned from spending a lot of time on this site, it's really fun to use the app Flight Radar to identify where planes are coming from. Publicly available information. Continuing along the site to the creek, this is the mouth of the creek, a particularly valuable area for native habitat. And so what we're doing is foregrounding the non-human actors, allowing the critters and plants to flourish here undisturbed. And then we've situated bench areas nearby for people to connect through citizen science to observe the wilds of nature. A second public cafe here on the left in the middle building opens up towards the creek. From Old Bayshore Highway, this creek-centered nature corridor draws people to experience the ecological haven. In a time of shrinking resources, we think the opportunity to reimagine aging lots and give back space to the public is critical and meaningful. As you approach the bay, the cafe includes outdoor seating, and a trellis provides a shaded, defined area that the public could use for birthday parties or other events. Here, the shoreline is healthy, layered with flourishing native plants. On the bay side of the northern part of the site, we've designed a picnic lawn with a second trellis for shade and human-scaled canopy. In a culture that rewards relentless productivity, we think, how can we create a parentheses in the day? Let people celebrate moments to pause, to contemplate. We specifically located the building lobbies inland away from this area, dedicating this picnic plaza to public use. It's not an ancillary use of the buildings themselves. There's another view of that plaza. The design of the buildings themselves are also inspired by nature. The materials of the lower level are of the earth. They're grounded materials that relate to the site. And the materials above are ethereal, of the sky, and designed for lightness. That said, they're also carefully fritted for bird safety. The buildings are designed sustainably to minimize their impact on nature. It's an all-electric HVAC system, which will decrease greenhouse gas emissions over 70% relative to a gas-fired equivalent. We're also using solutions such as low-carbon concrete to reduce the embodied carbon in the construction of this project. We've also brought some samples of these key materials, which we'll invite you to touch and feel. Ben will bring them up. In terms of species, we're prioritizing drought-tolerant native species, plants that will contribute to a thriving ecosystem. We're planting 200 trees on the site for natural shade and wind protection. And then lastly, I'd like to touch a bit on the project phasing. Again, responding to community needs, number one thing we've heard is build the Bay Trail, connect this Bay Trail. We're going to use it the minute it's out there. So we're committing to a continuous Bay Trail from the north to the south of the site in the first phase of the project. We're also going to be building the Southern Plaza, the welcoming portion of the project in that first phase. We anticipate the phase also including the center building, the southern parking garage, based on feedback from this commission, both sides of the creek, so a fully landscaped nature corridor in that first phase. We anticipate then moving to the south, followed by the northern portion of the project. Again, I'd like to thank you for your participation in helping shape this project over the past 2 years. We are proud to have a project that reflects the priorities and views of such a diverse and deserving community. And we're eager now to move forward with the Bayfront transformation. I, of course, welcome any questions, and we respectfully ask for your support and recommendation to council.
So I have a couple, but I'm going to let my colleagues. Yeah.
Hey, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Could you walk through your calculations on parking? It's 60% above what's required, so I'm still struggling to understand.
Sure.
Developer, why would you spend all of that money on parking?
Yeah. As someone who hates driving, rest assured, I've done as much as possible to reduce the parking on this site. It is based on market demands. So the project is parked at roughly 2.3 per thousand leasable. And that is as low as we think the market will allow for, this being a potentially office project. So it's comparison to other projects north and south. And how did, frankly, our leasing people would rather it be higher. They think it would be easier to lease with more parking. How did we get comfortable with as low as a 2.3? We invested in a shuttle. So we have a really convenient shuttle. We think a lot of our tenants are going to take to get to work. We've got 2 different Caltrain stations. We've got a BART station that's close by. We've got pedestrian infrastructure. So that's how we think we're going to make a 2.3 work.
So in 100% office, what would be the population that you would expect?
Number of people?
Yeah.
It could be 4,000 to 5,000. And so we've got a pretty robust TDM plan detailed in the CEQA document, and that's in order to reduce the number of people who are driving in their own cars to work.
And post-pandemic, with people working from home, you're still seeing 4,500 people?
So that's another interesting piece on driving, which is actually what hours of the day that they're coming. So I think post-pandemic, we're seeing less peak hour traffic, which reduces the overall traffic that a garage of that size might otherwise create.
Great. And then for the public parking, 40 spaces is 1.1% of the total. How did you come up with that?
40 was, I'm not sure if it was originally floated by the city or BCDC. I don't know. Yeah. And of those, 10% are EV charging. 10% of all of our stalls are EV charging, including the public stalls.
Great. In the development agreement, it seemed like there was uncertainty about the Easton Creek phasing. It was like either it'll be part of phase 1 or phase 2. Could you explain?
Yeah, I can explain. We fully anticipate at this time, phase 1 being the center building, the southern parking garage, and all of Easton Creek.
Mm-hmm.
In the development agreement, there is technically flexibility for us to start with a different phase, in which case we would do all of Easton Creek by the end of the second phase.
Okay. And then the vesting map, can you just provide a high level rationale on why the parcel kind of boundaries the way you're recommending?
Oh, there are 3 different owners related to 3 phases that allow sort of future optionality for the eventual sale of the buildings. It's not, it's sort of, I mean, frankly, it's related to why it took us so long to get here, which is we wanted to create a site that had enough density that it could be a meaningful cluster and that it could be a meaningful destination, which took 12 acres and a lot of parcels to bring them together. But ultimately, we don't need all of those parcels. It doesn't make sense to have a building crossing too. So we're simplifying down to the 3 ownership entities.
Great, thanks.
On in the phasing, how do you expect the lots to look during the extent of the phase? Like obviously phase 1, you're going to have a construction zone in phase 1. What is phase 2 and phase 3 going to look like over the course of 10 years?
Yeah, we will have construction fencing around, for example, phase 2 when phase 1 is under construction. And on that fencing, we'll have opportunities for educational materials. For example, I think of it as an interesting place to go learn about sea level rise. In the very beginning of the phase, we'll be actually piling dirt because this site involves so much raising of the grade and so much compaction that the site will be cleared and dirt will be there kind of in the process of becoming protective material. And I think it'll be kind of a fun educational opportunity for people. And then there'll be a functional bay trail, and that's 20 feet wide. So it's not going to be like a little meandering sidewalk. It's going to be a fully functional multimodal connection point past construction fencing with, like I said, art and educational opportunities.
Do you see the entire project kind of being scraped at once and then fencing going up after that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I continue on that. So then if the north parcel is gonna be phase 3,
Mhm.
you would be scraping that too at the same time in order to prepare for phase 1?
Exactly. Yeah. So the surcharge and dirt strategy, which we could spend an hour, I could pull our our engineers and go through it, but
Not.
is essentially raising the grade of the site and getting it to a level that it can be protective and functional for sea level rise protection is a long game. And so we intend to scrape the entire site as soon as we're entitled and able to start getting that dirt sort of settling there. And then you put in these kind of equivalent of meat thermometers to see when it's ready and cooked. So that'll be a single action in the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to just piggyback on, I'm starting with Commissioner Horan's comment about first about parking. So did I understand correctly? I know there's a total of 40 public,
Mhm.
but I thought only 20 is for the Bay Trail and 20 is for a potential restaurant. So are you saying now 40 would be for people who wanted to drive there and use the Bay Trail?
There will be 40,
Isn't that right?
there will be 40 publicly available parking stalls.
Including it doesn't matter if they're going to a restaurant, they can
Total. They can buy a coffee or they can take a walk and we don't care. They can
okay,
park.
very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And wait a minute. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I know I asked this before and I think I found it again. But you are not using voltaic tiles at all? They're not part of this project?
No.
Okay. And regarding, you mentioned this, I think you're talking about along Bay Shore, you're talking about a planter strip?
Mhm.
Well, so I guess this gets more into the design issues I have questions about, but there's very little space. I talked to you about this before, but I'm not satisfied. On the end, on the north end, where you have the parking structure and building 4, the parking structure, the last 2 buildings, the strip is basically 10 feet wide between the sidewalk and it's nothing. It's sidewalk and the parking structure and the other office building. So how are you there's not much space there, and I know there's a issue about the utilities, that you can't, I know you can't control all of it, but
Sure.
if you're envisioning this nature walk for, because this is many 100 feet, how would you do that then, given the,
Yeah, it's a good question. There are a lot of elements along that frontage. And as much as possible, what we're doing is following the vision plan, the Old Bay Shore Highway vision plan, which lays out the importance of a planter strip and a sidewalk. Where there are conflicting utilities, it's actually in our conditions of approval that we'll plant street trees should the utility relocation be successful that the city is taking on. But I think, as much as possible, we're trying to make that a good place to be a pedestrian. I think furthermore, we're actually orienting the exit of the parking garages towards the Bay Trail itself. And so we imagine pedestrians will use that for circulation as well.
okay.
We'll go back to that.
And let's see, phasing, got that one. So, bike spaces, I think I read that somewhere, but maybe you could tell how many, spaces for people, who might want to store their bike there while they're,
Yes. I think it's roughly 600 total across the site.
okay, very good. All right,
How many of those are public?
that's really what I was at.
I don't know offhand.
I think it's about 120 are
120?
going to be short-term bike
Okay.
parking spaces.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to be thrilled the day we get 120 bicyclists out there, by the way, as a side note.
Yeah, so are there any other questions? This is the question phase, right?
Could I follow up on traffic? So,
Sure.
in CEQA, I reviewed the VMT and then the optional level of service. Those are a little bit dated now. Is there any updated information that you have based on your latest simulations?
I think our level of service is reflective of the current design. If anything, took more conservative assumptions. I mean, the city kind of opined on the assumptions of the build out in the level of service analysis, and it takes the most conservative, both in terms of our project and the regional build out. So I think if anything, it will be getting better. Marginally.
Mhm.
Sure, come on.
I just have one question. You mentioned that you have 5.5 acres of parkland or open space. Is that including the tidal and marsh?
Yeah.
Space in the south end? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I thought of my question
Sure.
with regard to the plaza, which is
Yeah.
marshland, basically. How are you going to, do you have a plan for keeping, when they're making, people are coming over eastbound and they're making that left turn, it can get going pretty fast there on that corner and it's pretty exposed. So what do you propose to keep people from potentially going into what you're calling a plaza? It's a barrier or something, I don't know. Seems exposed to me to be calling it a plaza.
From a safety perspective. Yeah. In terms of actual barriers beyond a curb, that's something we could consider and, could talk to traffic engineers. One of the things that I think is actually a benefit of the site relative to the existing condition is because of the new protected bike lane and because of the grade of the plaza, I think the overall area will feel more populated and more urban, that people will actually be naturally driving slower. I think it will feel like less of a highway condition. Whereas today out there, you don't really feel the presence of the bay. And I think based on my experience, people drive like it's a highway, right? Coming around that corner. So I think it's going to be mitigated by just the character of the place.
Okay. So I do have more, but I don't know if I should. I don't know if this is it's more design issues, but
All-
all right, questions. All right, okay, so here I go. Thank you. Uh, So, well, all right, then here we go. So I don't want to dominate. I don't want to take away time from my colleagues if they,
We'll try.
Commissioner Shores, do you have something to say?
No, I don't think so.
Or, yeah, okay.
No, no question.
Yeah, all right, so, let's see, where do I get? So on your site plan, if I could could we just see the footprint again of the buildings?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I see is, very narrow spaces between those buildings. This is the first time we've really had an opportunity to discuss without being told it's not CEQA, it's not this. So I accept it's not a CEQA issue. I'll accept that for this conversation. It's a design issue. So am I understanding that there between the buildings, the parking structure building, and I'm going to call it number 4, I'm moving north, and you have names, but I can't see them from here. And then you've got Easton Creek and then the others. So beginning further north, there appears to me, if I measured properly, is maybe 50, 60 feet in between those two buildings. And perhaps if I measured properly, I'm asking you, about 300 feet of a corridor between those buildings. A corridor, I'm saying a valley, well, a void with a street and some kind of sidewalk. I don't know. I can't really tell from the drawings in between the buildings. So it's a long way, and it's this valley. It's a valley. It's got sides and this way from one end to the other. It's significant. So I noticed that, again, not CEQA related, but there was a wind study and there was also a shadow study done, which I find very interesting. On pages, well, let's see here. What are we? 4.1-35. It's wind conditions. And then of the proposed wind conditions, and then we get to a section a few pages later, 4.1-19, which is a shadow study. I also looked at it before, was told before, cannot talk about it, it's aesthetic. So now we're on aesthetic. So you commented on your special application for building height because you did explain how the proposed modification to standards respects preserves the character of the neighborhood in which your project is located, and regarding the let's see, existing conditions. Each of the buildings also subdivided into several distinct massing segments. This is what I think you said this, with architectural reveals, plane changes, balconies, separating one massing section from the next. The spacing between the buildings is such that sunlight hits the ground for a substantial area between buildings for much of the year. The site design and landscaping includes a variety of public paths, blah, blah, blah. But that is not actually what, I mean, I've read it. I've read that, spent all weekend reading this. And in fact, it is a large part of the year quite dark and very windy, to the point where the comments say, I don't know that they're allowed to say they're dangerous, but it's very uncomfortable, possibly hazardous, or something like that. And so I'm asking you how you came to that, wanting it to be that. I want a lot of things. I'd love this to be beautiful. I'd love to feel scale to the site, more scale to the site. But how have you proposed to mitigate that? Because those are several hundred feet in darkness, and which, by the way, appears to me also to go over into the Bay Trail significantly, like 600 feet at certain times during the year into the Bay. So there is a cast shadow. It is a significant project. So I'm bringing this up because we haven't had an opportunity to speak about design issues, and that you're asking for your heights. You're asking for these extra heights. Appreciate a lot of stuff you've done. of things we've talked about before, but we have not really had a chance to break
Sure.
down the design issues. So
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for spending your weekend delving into the details. I appreciate certainly the complexity of the project. On wind specifically, I pulled up the diagram, which actually, I mean, we are near the bay. It's a windy site. I was there with Kevin once when his hat flew off. So there's a windy site there today. What we're actually proposing is 50% of the site becomes what's called a comfortable condition. So comparison here is the blue is what's comfortable. You can see our project on the right has more blue than what exists today, which is only 10% of the site is comfortable. So I'm not going to pretend there's not going to be wind out there, but more of the site is comfortable. And furthermore, we're concentrating areas of recreational opportunities where we know they'll be largely wind protected. The second issue that I think you're getting at is the height of the buildings and why did we go as
and the cast shade they make.
Sure.
Mhm.
And so I think a couple things. One is we're responding to the general plan, which is increasing the density of this area for economic development to 3.0 FAR. We began the project thinking about a 3.0 massing. We ended up having some of the same reactions you had, that maybe the site feels too full at 3.0. Where can we pull back? And how do we scale back strategically, right? And so we thought, do we want to prioritize the service drive where trucks are going to be coming in to deliver things to the building? Or do we want to prioritize the Easton Creek corridor? The latter. We want to prioritize areas of nature that people will be coming to enjoy. So we pulled the buildings back from the Easton Creek corridor. We pulled the buildings back from the Southern Tidal Marsh. We pulled the foot of the parking garages back from the Bay Trail. So the shrinking of the project has been very intentional and very strategic to make this a place that is welcoming to the public. And overall, it's a 12-acre site, 5.5 acres publicly available open space, where today none of that exists. So it's the height and the strategic placement of the buildings that enables that. Now, does that mean this is a great place to be a delivery truck driver? It's an urban condition to be a delivery truck driver. And so I think that's a trade-off that we think is one that reflects the priorities of the community.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Any other questions?
And Madam Chair, this is the time to ask questions about any portion of the project. So any questions you have is during this section. If you have any other.
Okay. Yeah, when you mentioned you pulled the project in, you pulled it, did you shift it or you really pulled it in all over
We reduced the footprint of the buildings.
by,
The allowable FARs of 3.0 were 150,000, roughly 150,000 square feet below that.
did you, I know that you pulled the podium in a little bit. I'm talking about what's above the podium. Remember that from before, or you're saying everything came in? Because I remember these numbers from before. I don't see a change. I guess basically asking you what, I've seen this now since, right? Since wherever that was, that first meeting. I just am having, I have to put it in a question form.
Yeah.
Show me where is a significant reduction in, I mean, basically the footprint of your site. Because I'm having trouble seeing it. What change?
Sure. I mean, I think since the project inception, like I said, we tried to fit 3.0 on the site. We reduced that down to a 2.7. We did it in a strategic way where we thought it had the most impact on the public, on the community, on the environment. And we're also at a level that the project remains feasible. We're investing significantly in sea level rise protections and in other community benefits. And the project is at a scale to support that.
Okay. So anybody else have any? Okay, good. Thank you, Virginia. All right, so now comes the time when I can ask for, right? Public comment, we're at public comment. All right. So I think I'd love to know, and by the way, I appreciate all the comments that I think all of us got, both critical of the project as well as supportive and over time. So thank you, anybody listening. We do read them. I first want to ask, how many of you present would like to speak? Help me guesstimate.
Eight.
Oh, no, I didn't. I have
About 8 to 10.
10 out there and I've got two. You said 4, 5. I've got 6 or 7 cards and 10 people. Is that what we have?
Do we have cards for everybody?
No, we don't have cards for everybody. That's okay. We let them speak. Okay,
That's how you know how many.
that's true. Good point. I've got about 17. Thank you. So then we'll let everybody have 3 minutes. Okay. All right. The first is from Constance Quirk. Constance Quirk, please come.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Constance Quirk, and I live in Burlingame. You know, I would imagine that this is one of the largest development projects in Burlingame's history. 2 10-story parking structures, 3 11-story office buildings that equal 1.5 million square feet. This is excluding the parking structures, and you'll have to pardon me, I don't understand why they were excluded from the FAR, 2 large buildings. I think most regular people like myself cannot grasp the enormity of this project. It's one thing to look at a set of plans, quite another to visualize it. I want to focus on the 2 parking structures for 3,400 vehicles. One of my questions was how many of these spaces will be allotted to the public? And I believe you said 40. So that answered the question. The developers want us to come down there and are only providing 40 parking spaces. There are amenities that you listed that I won't go over again, but I think that's quite low. It's lowballed. I think you probably need 100. How many of these parkings will be guaranteed with no ability to rescind? And one of the reasons I say this is Windy Hill developers and Tenant Verkada in downtown San Mateo had an agreement with the city to provide 150 spaces on the weekend and in the evening in their new building. But they have rescinded due to, quote, a security incident that they refused to discuss. So what I'm saying, if you are providing access to the bay, you have to also guarantee us, the public, parking spaces with very good signage, may I add. Also, has there been a traffic study in the neighborhoods? El Camino, California, Rollins, Oak Grove, side streets will be very, very impacted, Peninsula, to get to this site, not just the 101 north and south. The impacts of this development are huge. Are there additional plans to provide infrastructure such as schools, parks, roads, and for the increase in population? As a planning commissioner, please think of the consequences and unintended unintended consequences of this enormous project. More people equal more housing equals more needs that have yet to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next. I would like to welcome Jaime Vasquez.
Good afternoon, Chair, FAF, and Commissioners. My name is Jaime Vasquez. I'm a field representative out of Local 217 that covers the city of Burlingame. Today, I stand before you to emphasize the importance of planning for the future of our beloved city, Burlingame. As we progress into the year ahead, it becomes increasingly vital to lay a solid foundation for this prosperity as well-being of our community. Our significant step in this direction is this project, Peninsula Crossing, located 1200 All Bayshore Highway. By using DevCon Construction, DevCo West is making a commitment to the community. Not only does this project hold a promise to contribute to the growth and development of our city, but it also represents an opportunity for workers to make a livable wage, to earn healthcare, and for apprenticeships to evolve their career. Peninsula Crossing is not merely a development proposal, it represents an investment that resonates deeply with the people of our city. It is a project we feel generally invested in and something we can take immense pride in as we embark in this journey together. Let us embrace the opportunity to shape our future with thoughtful consideration. I urge the Planning Commission tonight to pass this Peninsula Crossing project, the value it brings to our community. Let us seize this chance to plan for the future that will make Burlingame an even better place to live, work, and thrive. Thank you for your time and consideration. Together, let us pave the way for a brighter and more promising future for Burlingame.
Thank you. The next speaker is Oscar Mazariak. Sorry, sorry.
I know it's difficult. All right. Good evening, esteemed members of the Planning Commission meeting. Planning Commission, my name is Oscar Mazariegos. I am a field representative for the NorCal Carpenters Union, also representing Carpenters Local 217 that covers the area of Burlingame. As a union carpenter, I stand before you today with great pride and enthusiasm to express my unwavering support for the project proposed by DIFCO at 1200 Old Bayshore Road in Burlingame. This project represents more than just another construction endeavor. It embodies the promise of progress, growth, opportunity for our community. It signifies the creation of jobs that will not only sustain families, but also uplift them, providing stable incomes and benefits that are essential for a thriving workforce. This project is a testament to the commitment of DIFCO to uphold to the highest standards of craftsmanship and quality. As union carpenters, we take immense pride in our work, knowing that our skills contribute to buildings that stand the test of time, buildings that become landmarks in our cities and sources of pride for generations to come. Furthermore, the development of 1200 Old Bayshore Road will not only enhance the physical landscape of Burlingame, but also contribute to its economic vitality. By attracting businesses and investment, it will stimulate growth and prosperity, creating a ripple effect that benefits the entire community. But perhaps most importantly, this project embodies the values of collaboration and partnership. The successful completion of such a venture requires the collective effort of developers, contractors, carpenters, and the community at large. It is through this collaboration spirits that we can overcome challenges, achieve milestones, and ultimately realize our shared vision of a better, brighter future. This project will give a chance to Burlingame residents to work in the city they live. In closing, I urge you to join me in supporting this project. Let us embrace this opportunity not only to build structures, but also build bridges that connect us, strengthen us, and pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Monica? Monique? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Pep, fellow commissioners and staff. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Moniqua Brown, and I'm a field representative for the North Cal Carpenters Union. Out of Local 217 here in San Mateo County. I'm here this evening to speak about 1200 Old Bay Shore Road. This development will bring good paying jobs and benefits to our community. It will also help with training our apprentices and making sure that they get the hours needed to be successful. Work in their own community and earn a livable wage and health care and benefits. DevCo West is making an investment in this community, and by working with DevCon Construction, they will not only turn over a high-quality project, but will also be making sure the people of this community are taken care of. But we'll also be making sure that people of this community are taken care of. I have been a carpenter since 1999. I was able to raise 2 daughters, buy a home, and continue my career in the construction industry. Because of projects like this, plus I always have support and training whenever needed until the day I retire. Please keep supporting responsible projects like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next, is Russ Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Pfaff. I have so many questions, but I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to be laser focused, I hope. Let's start with the building mass and the design. Now, big can be beautiful, but it isn't, not yet. The current design is architecturally lackluster, and that's not to say that the design doesn't have its interesting moments. If you look at the design overall, we can do better. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting that we not build this project. I am suggesting that we can build it better. The community has to live with this project for generations, and an architecturally spectacular building could actually be considered a community benefit. I encourage those who are working on the design to simply survey projects of this magnitude from around the world to be inspired. There are many, many ways to design and build beyond the box. Now I want to talk a little bit about the development agreement, and we'll start with community benefits. According to the report, there are 6 community benefits listed in the plan. It looks to me like 5 out of the 6 benefits for the site are not necessarily for the community. Let me explain. I'll go one by one. Sea level rise, for example, sea level rise improvements. This protects the investment first and the community second. The public plaza and access to the bay benefits the tenants first and the community second. The same for the cultural art and community space. Now, the Bay Trail improvements, as I understand it, Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, are mandatory as a condition of approval for any project that comes along the bayfront. Now, let's think about this just for an example. The community needs more indoor event space, so why not provide an indoor auditorium for the community first, and it will also benefit the tenants second. This can be accomplished if you reevaluate all the outdoor space for gathering and perhaps reimagine both outdoor and indoor spaces. I might add that Burlingame's daily winds can be ferocious, inhibiting the pleasurable use of outdoor open space. I might also add that a lot of other projects are promising the same thing, open plazas, access to the bay. So this isn't the only one that will do that. Now let me move on to phasing. Oh, I've got 32 seconds. All the community benefits, no matter what they are, should be included in phase 1. Realistically, other phases are in jeopardy of never happening, especially if the time to complete these additional phases is 20 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now I'm going to move to others in the audience who might like to speak that I haven't gotten to? No? Nobody? Oh, yes.
Hello, my name is Chris Chelberg and I live in Burlingame. I just had a couple of comments based on the design and some of the nearby structures that were talking about some of the scale of the project in relation to others. I haven't been paying a great amount of attention to this project. This is my first time attending the Planning Commission meeting, and I expect to do more in the future. But just in terms of the context of the building size, the buildings are, what, 10 or 11 stories each, more or less, if I'm correct. 1350 Bayshore Road, just on the other side of the proposed development, the large black structure there, is at least 9 stories right there, which would be like directly adjacent to this structure. The Hyatt Regency, which is across the road, is also about 10 stories as well. So again, it's not out of scale compared to its surrounding environments. The Crown Plaza, again, across the corner, across the street, right alongside there, is also about 10 stories as well. So given its surroundings, 10 stories for an office structure is not out of scale given its surroundings, maybe given what's there, but we're trying to intensify the commercial development in that area. 2 other hotels nearby along the Bayshore, just sort of showing that there are larger structures along the Bayshore, would be the Embassy Suites and the Doubletree, which are 8 or 9 stories, as far as I can tell. So just keeping that in mind, objections or concerns about this project based on the scale don't seem to be as warranted to me, given that we already have large structures nearby. There wouldn't be a significant impact overall based on the pre-existing structures in the area. I have no real concerns, or I don't really have much else to say based on the project. Haven't been following it quite enough. I look forward to seeing it come back if it does. But I did just want to bring those up for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm a resident of North Shoreview, San Mateo. So when we're talking about environmental impacts and traffic studies, my neighborhood happens to be one of the ones where people take the shortcut. But I have to look at this in 2 ways. I have to look at it as a resident and as a builder. If this is going to take 10 years, that's half of my career that I could spend literally 8 minutes away from my house. I spend more time with my family, less time on the road. Love that aspect. The other side, I have to deal with this being a huge impact to my life where I live. Not so much when I start hearing the addition of the Bay Trail. You're adding spaces where me and my kids can ride our bikes from our house and go have lunch at a restaurant, lock our bikes up, enjoy the Bay Trail, because that's the one section that I noticed that has not been completed on this side. And that's basically our turnaround. We come down, we turn around, we go back. It'd be nice to be able to keep on going and maybe have that as a stopping point. With all the art, it's always fun to experience art with your children. Everything I've been hearing today, including the on and off ramp modification. Because if you increase the traffic flow to and from, we'll get less traffic through our neighborhood and impacting our daily lives. So I was really glad to hear that, and I was really glad to hear the Bay Trail and all the amenities that are going to be available to the public. Because too many times you have developments that block off the public. And I love the fact this opens up a community space as well as a job site. And that's pretty much it. Everything I've heard, I really like from both sides.
Thank you very much for your comments. There was one in the back.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Planning Commission. My name is Kevin Kretsch. I'm the General Manager of the Hyatt Regency San Francisco Airport. Very near to this project and have been involved and partnered with the Woodstock Divco West teams on all the planning over the last 2.5 years. One thing that they've done in addition to working with this planning commission and the city council, as Virginia had mentioned earlier, is they've listened. They listened to partners and other businesses such as us, and really looking to see how they can benefit the community beyond just what the ordinances are, the development needs are. I've been the general manager for Hyatt Regency San Francisco Airport since 2019. I also worked there for 5 years in an operations role. So for 10 years, I've been associated with the city of Burlingame and the Bayshore Corridor. The two things that really stand out to me in listening to our guests that come and stay at the hotel, millions of guests. Number one, they want a beautification of the immediate area. They want to be able to walk outside, enjoy natural resources, and enjoy the amenities that Burlingame can offer to them. Right now, what we see along the corridor and what we see along the Bayshore Trail is disconnection, is lack of enhancement, and an area that drastically needs to be improved. This development will take what is now and create a gold standard for what our future is for Burlingame. It will connect our residents to one of the most beautiful natural resources we have right across the street from our hotel, the Bay. And the Bay Trail, as was mentioned, is being built beyond the requirements of what the city is asking for in the Bay Trail. It's being built beyond and setting, again, the gold standard for the entire trail along Bayshore. So our undoubted support is with DIVCO West Woodstock. I submitted a formal letter as well, so you get a chance to read that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I did also, we did receive your letter as well. Susan, right? Yeah.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Susan Baker, and I am the President and CEO for the Burlingame SFO Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate what you're doing, your hard work, including the city and everyone that's here. It's quite a wonderful vibe. We've already submitted our letter of recommendation in support of Peninsula Crossing on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. What I'd like to reiterate, if I may, is the fact that not only does it bring economic growth to our community, but my personal charge is that we develop this entire community as one, and we live together in it, we work together in it, and we support each other. And it was my pleasure to get to know DIVCO West and all its constituents, including Virginia, as she would sit there, as all of them did, and still do today moving forward, and they're listening. They're listening to our needs, they're incorporating, and they're trying to do the best for our community. Make no mistakes, we understand they're here to build an amazing structure and bring in more people into our community with jobs that, again, support our economic growth. And again, I want to thank you and every one of you for allowing me to speak this evening. And again, the Burlingame SFO Chamber is in full support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any others? Are there any emailed comments maybe?
We have 2 email comments. The first is signed by Glenn Cronwetter, and he has a Burlingame address. He says, I strongly oppose this project. Office space vacancies are the highest ever from San Francisco down the peninsula as more people are working remotely and tech companies are experiencing layoffs. Let the companies behind this project utilize existing empty office space first and leave our visual interaction with the Bay intact. Is tax revenue more important than setting and culture that Burlingame is built on? And again, that's signed by Glenn Cronwetter. Then there is a letter from Geeta Dev representing the Sierra Club. Hello, my name is Gita Dev, and I'm the Conservation Committee Chair for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. I'm also speaking for Sierra Club's Bay Alive campaign, which represents tens of thousands of Sierra Club members and supporters who share our commitment to protect the health of our bay, our shoreline communities, and our wildlife by promoting living shorelines, healthy waters, and just equitable solutions to sea level rise. We appreciate the attentiveness of the developers in reaching out to us early on and modifying their plans to bay shoreline for better habitat value and resiliency. And we appreciate the inclusion of bird-friendly design considerations such as the fruiting patterns on the glazed facades. Large developments on the bay edge can negatively impact the ecology and behavior of migratory and resident birds, as well as other fish and wildlife species. While the exterior lighting of the project is focused downward and is respectful of the bay, we remain concerned with artificial light at the nighttime emanating from inside of the multi-story buildings and parking structures reflecting on the bay's water and mudflats. We suggest that the project proponents consider automatic shades that draw down at dusk to avoid the impacts of light pollution on the bay. We ask that bird safe and dark sky considerations be codified into the entitlements to ensure the persistence of these project features into the future. Thank you for your consideration. And then there was a email from John Medina of the UA Local 483 with a letter which I believe has been placed on the dais. So just for the record, I want to note that it was received. It's from the Sprinkler Fitters and Apprentices Local 483 and has been delivered to all of the planning commissioners.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess now. Oh,
Can I,
that's-
is it possible for me to ask a couple questions more of Virginia that have come out of our public comment?
if I open yes, I will open the public hearing.
Just
I
a
didn't
public
close it,
hearing.
actually.
Well,
Still there. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Virginia? I want to revisit the 40 public parking spaces.
Sure.
Can you help me a little bit understand within the parking structures where the public parking might be relative to other things?
Yes.
I'm striving,
The-
the print's small and I'm.
Yeah, understood. There's a lot of detail there. The public parking stalls are in the southern garage, very intentionally also where the restrooms are, the bike mechanic station, the airplane viewing platform, the water bottle filling station, and it's centrally located between the two public cafes. So designed for convenience and also, as someone mentioned, the importance of signage and making sure the public knows they're welcome here. It'll be very clearly indicated that that's the garage that has numerous public facilities.
So that's kind of going in that main driveway right off
Correct.
right, that big intersection now, you're going straight in, going into the garage, and presumably they're on that ground floor.
Exactly.
Making it accessible. Fabulous. The 40.
Yeah.
Is the layout such that if you felt like there was an increased demand in off-hour times by public, is the design cohesive enough that you can say, oh, I can just extend up to, to the next floor and I can add another 50, and it wouldn't be no way, I can't get there because there's a roadblock
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? I'm saying, is there flexibility in that 40 such that if we got to where we're getting 100 people showing up on the weekends,
Yeah.
not parking 3,200 people on the weekend?
Right. No, I think it's a great idea. And I think there's certainly flexibility. There's details to be worked out in terms of the security protocols, the gate arms, the operations and maintenance, certainly. But I think the idea, if you're out there having an event on the weekend and we're going to have people biking and, coming to the site for a cool Bay Trail event and we need 100 parking stalls. Yeah.
So I guess my point being is that
Yeah.
finalize, let's not put up concrete barriers at
Sure.
40 and no way to the others.
Right. No, I think it's good.
Totally understand the security part because we've got that going on with the town hall here, in downtown.
Yep.
Is we're trying to use the parking. Yes, the office needs it too, but there's off-hour times where hardly anybody's going to use it. So
Totally.
make sure that we leverage.
No, I think
Need if we have it.
it's a really good point. Absolutely.
So Perfect. Thank you. That's what I want to talk about.
You're welcome.
Wait, Virginia. Sorry. He did, I'm going.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So, one of the public comments, was involving, having some indoor space, and I thought that was actually a good point. Something available that's not in the wind. It is windy and it is, there is shadow cast a lot in the,
Mhm.
and, so is there some possibility of having some space that even if it's indoor, outdoor, something that is,
Yeah, we have two public cafes that we think will actually be really popular, and they both have both indoor and outdoor space that'll be publicly accessible and open.
that's not really what I meant. That's commercial. That's a tenant in there. I'm just talking about like as a public benefit.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea. I would say as we polled the public in the beginning of this project, the priority and the interest of the community was recreational spaces, outdoor spaces, using the adjacency to the bay. And what makes this site really unique is actually the habitat and the natural environment. And so we responded to those priorities and have invested in those in terms of where we think the public is going to feel most welcome and where we think that they'll really enjoy the site. In addition to, like I said, the two different cafes. The project began with a single cafe and people said, we think this is going to be a really popular place for the public to come and spend time. And so we've added two, and we've also added shelter trellis areas in the outdoor for people to be able to, have for an event or a shaded area that's also outdoors.
And so just to clarify what you're calling a cafe, there's no tenant. That is a potential, or do you have a tenant for a cafe that you have someone in mind?
We do not have identified an operator for.
So you're just,
cafe yet.
this is sort of like the space is, what could become, if you got a tenant, could become a cafe or a restaurant or whatever is that what you mean?
Fully intend for it to be a cafe space. we haven't committed to a certain operator yet. The project isn't
Right.
entitled. So yeah, a ways away, but yes.
The plan. Okay, very good. Those were my questions.
Okay.
If I can add.
Sure.
There is actually the project down by the Marriott, which is under construction now, actually has part of its program, some public meeting space that is supposed to be usable. So it's not that we don't have it coming up, it's just in other parts of our ongoing projects.
Got it.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's right. I do remember that one. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
That I have. So, I guess then this is the part. So now I close, right? Any more? Oh, no, I have to ask. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, that's it. Sorry. Then thank you very much, everybody. So now comes our, our deliberation. Well, I'm going to start. And Virginia, it's really because we have not had the opportunity. It came very baked. This project, to me, it came baked for the size of it. You had a plan that was pretty defined, and yeah, you made some tweaks, and I really do appreciate you working with the city on all the phasing and such like that, the development issues. Definitely, I don't want you to think I'm not appreciative. We know that meetings are going on and we are not really privy to them, but appreciate that. So I brought this with me because I don't know how else to explain this in good verbiage, but this is it's a espresso cup and saucer, and they're in proportion to each other. That's how design is. I'm from the design world, and that's how any designer thinks normally. I realize there are constraints, and everybody has a piece of this pie in your big development plan. And this is what I see happening. The same saucer. This is what I see. I see too much I appreciate the fellow who came and said he understands the big buildings. Yeah, there are a lot of big buildings. They're not as close together. These are extremely tall. I actually personally have no problem with height. Love tall buildings. Iconic, great. This here, this could be taller, but have enough green, enough space around it. I just don't know how things are going to be growing in between buildings and the space that you have in the shadow, in the cast shadow. All these natives, they need a lot of sun. And I don't know how that's all going to happen. The drawings are great, but they're not, maybe they're promoting the project, which is the job of the drawings, the renderings. That's what they do. So I personally see a potentially very beautiful project, but to me, it's got too much mass. I went back to my design guidelines that were put together by 2 members of the Planning Commission, one that just left, Taronis, and Stan Vistica, who's no longer with us. They came after the residential design review guidelines, and they were needed very badly. And they talk about human scale. Every other word, human scale, human scale. I'm having trouble on this one, finding a human scale. It's a lot of mass. It's not so much the height, it's the void, it's what's in between them. So this is where I'm having trouble. And so I'm going to be quiet for a while. Anyone else?
I can go. I have a different perspective. I think the project is really exciting from the get-go. I think that this corridor of Burlingame is in a much needed state of disrepair. And this checks a lot of the boxes. And I think the size is probably one of those big gulps that we have to make because it has to be profitable for the developers. And although we want perfect viewable spaces and less square footage and less parking, it just, unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's hard to pencil these things out. And so I'm of the opinion that you have that on one side of a scale, and then you have your public benefit on the other. And for everything I've heard from Belmont all the way up to South San Francisco is how important that Bay Trail is. And this connection of a Bay Trail is different than any other Bay Trail project that's been proposed since I've been on the Planning Commission. This is a game changer type situation. So as far as the EIR goes, I've been in support of that since it came out. There's a minimal impact as they found through many reports, especially with a building and a project of this scale. It's actually quite remarkable, some of the minimal impact that's been shown in that report. So I'm happy to pass that on to the City Council. Second is the entitlements. Again, yes, we have to, on one side, take some of the negatives of a big project, but where else in Burlingame do you put a big project? Is it just we don't do big projects in Burlingame? Or do we look at a situation like this where, yes, it's going to be a big project. Yes, it's the biggest in Burlingame, but it's also one of the most impactful. And the impact that it puts together, to me, far outweighs the negatives. And so I'm in support of the entitlements and the commercial design review. The last one was, the least exciting for me is the recommendation of the development agreement. I wish this could all be built at once, but I'm a contractor. I understand how things need to be phased, not only just to make sure it gets built, but to make sure it gets built well. So it's not great that 10 years we're going to be looking at some dirt mounds, with a finished space in the middle, but we do get our Bay Trail. We do get a much needed change to the landscape. I spent a lot of my time across the street at Bayside Park with my son in Little League. And this is going to change a lot of what we do down there. And that's really exciting. And so all in all, I'm very excited about the project. I think it brings a lot of natural and environmental impact with the resurrection of Easton Creek. Obviously, we talked about the Bay Trail, the marshlands, and obviously the impact of the sea level change. I mean, you don't get that without a project like this with the grade change. I mean, that's extremely expensive to do. We all know Burlingame's having a hard time even funding the grade separation at Broadway, one of the worst intersections in California. And this allows us to check another box of highly needed environmental impact. So I'm excited, and I totally understand some of the drawbacks. No argument there. I just feel that there's a largely weighted community benefit as a whole, a holistic whole of this project.
Thank you.
I'll go.
Who's going?
I'll go. I'm in a similar viewpoint on this project. I think that it does bring a lot of benefits to the community. You know, the height it's not outrageously more than the other projects that are being proposed right now. We changed the FAR in this area so that we would gain more density and make projects pencil. At 1.0, nothing was penciling and all we had was warehouse space that was dilapidated. So we're seeing movement now in an area that the city council wanted to see change. And so we're getting it. I think that, you know, the lower FAR that they're proposing under 3 is commendable, but also that they're 45% lot coverage. And in order to make this pencil and do 45% lot coverage, you got to go up. And what that lot coverage, lower lot coverage is getting us are these amenities up against the Bay Trail and the Easton Creek. Once you draw in all those lines, there's not many other places to build on the site without getting density. So I think overall, there's been a lot of listening and a lot of change and evolving of these buildings so that we can get better space and try and minimize light impacts and all of that. And so I think the project has gotten better over the time that I've been watching it and the discussions that I've been a part of. So I like the project. I'm in support of the everything that we're supposed to be in support of. So yeah, I didn't see anything in the EIR that concerned me. I also feel like the design has come a long way. There's always going to be an opportunity to tweak, and there's still time and effort to be made on it. I hope that it will continue to get better. And then the development agreement, that's a part of life, and I hope that we can do it faster and not longer. So thank you.
Who wants to go next?
Sure. So I am really happy to see that the completed Bay Shore is now part of phase 1. That wasn't how I recall this first coming before the commission. That's a really big deal. And I just wanted to say thank you. I know that if that was easy, it would have been in there at the beginning, right? So I appreciate that getting around. That's going to make a big difference to a lot of people, I know. And I also, I generally agree with all of my commissioners' comments. I really appreciate your analogy with the cups. That was very illustrative. Thank you. I got exactly what you're talking about. I think I would be hesitant to say that this project would fit in with Burlingame in almost any other site within the city. I think on Rollins Road or closer to downtown Burlingame, this would be kind of crazy. But I think that in this specific site where it's right across from a highway entrance, I think that it's making the best that it can of it while still being economical. I would certainly hope that the landscape planners have taken into account shading when it comes to their plantings, because that's certainly an egg on everyone's face if that turns out to not work a couple of years down the line. Yeah, generally it certainly could be better, but I think that there are some significant benefits that come with the overall project that I'm happy about. And yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Maybe the middle way. So first of all, I really appreciate Virginia and DIPCO West. I think it's true. You do listen. You're really collaborative in accepting feedback. So thanks for that. And I agree that the community benefits are clear. And some of our proposals, they're not so clear. The size of the open space, the Bay Trail connection, really great. And the phasing has been a big improvement from what you presented the last time. I do like the architecture. I think you've put a lot of effort into the details, and I think it's a beautiful project. I'm really struggling with the size of the parking garage. I'm not struggling with the square footage of the office and lab. But those parking garages are big, and they're, in my view, they're going to be 1,000 empty spaces. To the extent that we're successful with public transportation, with the new Burlingame train station after the grade crossing, with 600 bicycles, that's a lot of parking. And I would just love to see those garages smaller to make more open space. So, you know, I can, first of all, I can support the project and recommend city council, but with these strong comments that 3,400 parking spaces just encourage more traffic. Traffic is my number one concern. I spent 5 hours combing through these documents. The level of service assessment is scary. The traffic light on Broadway, on the overpass, getting onto 101 southbound to make that left will be an 8-minute delay. I would lose it if I was sitting in traffic for 8 minutes to make a left-hand turn. So that's partly your problem, but it's really the city's problem. So traffic, the cumulative effect of development on those traffic lights is going to be a disaster. 8 minutes at a traffic light. The consultant said both on-ramps will be backed up beyond the on-ramps at rush hour, which will cause 101 traffic. So it's a real issue beyond, I think, what we're talking about. Height, I'm not super thrilled with, but I think the difference between 180 and 200 or 215, it's not going to make that much of a difference overall. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
You know, I agree with the parking garages, and I was driving over to the Bayside today and drove by Facebook campus, and it would be interesting for me to understand if we could get some numbers from them to see how much of their parking garage is actually being used. I think that was but do you remember, was that 80,000 square foot parking garage? I can't remember offhand what it was, but it's a pretty big parking garage as well. And what I did notice is that the coffee shop was really busy, which has not been normal. So I saw a lot of people kind of walking around, and I did see more parking at the street level that I've not noticed before. And I go over there pretty often. So it would be interesting to see what's going on over there in their parking garage. I can't remember if it was 20,000 spots. I can't remember what it was offhand, but I'd like to see a little bit more information from them if you can get some. I just don't know that we need this much parking over on the Bayside. If we have, you know, like some of the biomed facilities, they have these big buses that transport their employees. Would that be better space used if you have a space for these buses where they can park and then they can bring their employees to Marin or to the East Bay? I just would like to have you investigate that a little further. I like the project. I feel like the design could go a little bit further. I feel like there's something missing. I almost feel like these little alcoves where people can come in and look out at the bay feels like kind of like a motel room or hotel room where and it's not, it's an office. I'm not sure what it is, but it just feels like something's missing. But overall, I like it. It just feels like it needs to be tweaked a little bit. I agree about the traffic. I'm pretty worried about these stop signs and this amount of time that people are going to be waiting. Other than that, I appreciate the hard work that you've gone to build this, to come up with this design and be creative, and how you've subdivided the lots and how you've created the different entities. I would also ask, for me, more public benefit early on, more of the open space early on, so that we as a community can enjoy it. And I think Commissioner Haran mentioned that at one of our meetings. It would be very much appreciative. And other than that, I can see approving this project.
I forgot two things. One is, I think Commissioner Schmidt had a great idea about public parking. The 40 seems anemic to me if you keep with 3,400, but if it could flex, it'd be a shame if the public were limited to 40 and there were 3,000 empty spaces right next door. So that's a great add. And lastly, for the development agreement, if if the extension happens, then it allows the public plaza to not be finished until 2039. I think that's a little bit too many loopholes. So it'd be great if the development agreement could be tightened up. So again, I can recommend the whole thing to the city council with those comments for them to consider.
So how are we gonna, I think how do you want to move forward on this? Like have different votes or what are we gonna do?
That's what I'd prefer, yes.
Okay.
Doing a vote on the environmental review and the environmental document, doing one on the commercial design review and including all the permits, and then doing a vote on the development agreement. And of course, these are all going to be recommendations to the city council. So whether or not the commissioner or the chair recommends that the city council approve or not approve the project.
So where there have been a few alterations, for example, I mean, at least in concept regarding the parking, the public parking and such. Actually, that's not development. No, it's the plaza issue, for example, how it's dealt with. Can that be added to when that item comes and we're voting on it or we're recommending it? Can that be thrown in or?
So those comments have definitely been taken today. They're going to be passed along to the city council.
Okay,
Letting
great.
them know that the planning commission strongly recommends that they consider this aspect, for example, the parking.
Very good, as well as the design issues. And then can they relook at the parking? Because those are,
Absolutely. Those will all be,
pull those in and get some more green space. But what we're recommending now is what we saw.
yes, the recommendation is going to be the resolution of yes, we recommend it. However, the staff report to the city council is certainly going to reflect all the great conversation that's happened.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then help.
Okay. I make a motion that we recommend the certification of the EAR report and the adoption of the water supply assessment per the staff report and everything that we received.
I'll second that.
And then we would do a roll call vote for
Mhm.
that. We'll do that.
Okay, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Shores,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lowenthal.
Aye.
And Chair Pfaff.
Aye.
I make a motion that we recommend the commercial design review special permits for the building height and development under tier 3 community benefits and vesting tentative or the tentative map.
I second that.
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Shores.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lowenthal.
Aye.
And Chair Pfaff.
I can't, no. So,
Okay, I make a recommendation or a
Motion.
motion. Thanks. Needed that. I make a motion on the recommendation of the development agreement.
Second that.
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Shores,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lowenthal.
Aye.
And Chair Pfaff.
aye.
And for this one, since none of these actions are actually happening today and their recommendations, they are not up.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you for coming, all of you and developers as well. Thank you. Okay, now I need my script.
I think you ought to
Guys, get out.
a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Let 'em
Give it
out.
Yeah,
Gonna get anywhere.
all right. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That is a tough one. Could you let them know the meeting?
Yeah, probably should not released them.
Huh?
I get the last.
You want to tell them to clear the room? They're like,
You clear the chamber, the meeting is still going on.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, we good? Okay. Now we're on. Fortunately, there's nothing on design review items. Number 10, there are no design review study items. Commissioners' reports. I'm gonna let Commissioner Schwartz reflect on what we did, because I think two of us went to the housing shindig.
Right. So we're really pleased to see them go over a lot of very specific laws that have been coming through the state Senate in the past few years and are upcoming. That we got some giant packets. Some of the things that stood out that have just come out is that they have come up with a law to allow ADUs to be parceled out separately and sold as their own tiny houses, basically, in people's backyards. So we had lots of conversations about the logistics of that. There was also talk about getting like a set of pre-approved ADUs on a municipality level that people could then use to put in their backyards to simplify that process. Those were the big standouts for me. Was there anything else?
Well, you came a little later, but
Right.
there was the one explaining the one about the religious institution.
Oh,
And I think really there are some in the Central Valley, for example, big churches, they've got lots of parking. And I think this, and maybe there's some infills in cities, I don't know, but it was allowing, as long as there are objective design standards, you probably know this, has a code like everything else, forgot the name, that it would be easier, and there was a certain amount of affordable housing, I mean, like lower than what's it, affordable, whatever it is, lower
Yeah.
than average.
Low income, yep, or low in terms of the category.
Low in terms of the category, that it would be that the institutions could add housing to their lots. And I think it had more to, in Burlingame, it's not so interesting, but because we already have housing on that. I'm thinking the major corridors with churches, we already have housing there. So for us, there are some areas that don't allow housing in those. So for that, it's interesting. But and then there was the ADU thing was quite interesting, because I was wondering why I didn't think ADUs actually can be reviewed. I thought they go over the counter, except for life and safety. So I was a little surprised at it was a cute idea, having a good architect design a template. And maybe the idea was there would be a couple of attractive ones and people wouldn't have to go to Abudo or whatever, Budo, whatever the company is. There'd be other styles, but I kind of didn't understand why they would even be worrying about that, but it's good that they're thinking more of design, maybe, that people were a little intimidated by the whole otherwise.
yeah. And I didn't know this about the religious institutions
Yeah.
law. So that at first I thought that was like something that would be owned and managed by the institution, maybe for the members of their congregation or workers or something like that. Apparently it is meant for you to give that over to a different ownership entity. It's built on land that at the time of construction, or like before this law was passed, was owned by a religious institution.
Oh,
So it's
I
just a regular,
pitched that.
yeah, no,
That's
it's just a
good.
regular apartment building that gets built on what was formerly a church parking lot. And like the church has to have owned it when the law was passed, so they can't
That
just
was it.
pass it around, right? And then also they passed a law that was specifically meant to get more cottage courts built. So it was like,
Yes. Mhm.
it was a lot of very strict requirements you had to meet in order to then apply to this law. So I think that I don't foresee that coming up a whole lot because it's so strict and you need, just the right size of building and the certain number of buildings on the lot, and the lot must be the certain amount of size and so on. It's so restrictive. I don't see that coming up.
Well, Mr. Houston, you don't like that. I saw it and I thought, yay, finally. You like that too. It was very cool because it was infill.
It is, yes.
It was cool. And we've seen actually a recent one here. We've seen one on was it Cappuccino? We have seen one. Hasn't come back yet, so I can't talk about it, but it's the same idea where it's a defined, smaller houses and I thought that was very interesting, but they weren't sure how many takers they'd have. But he did, I have to say, he did acknowledge, the guy's name was Joshua? He gave it the first.
Joshua.
The agency is, what are they called again? Home for All? No, 21 Elements.
That's right.
20, I'm getting these slowly. 20 Elements.
That's good.
And he said, he acknowledged, finally someone said it, too many things being thrown against the wall. He showed a map of hundreds of law, maybe thousands, I don't know, and how they get whittled down. And a lot is just being thrown out there without really seeing what is actually effective. And it's not necessarily the best way to be doing stuff, but that's what is happening right now. So it is it's an acknowledgement that the staff, the city staff have a whole lot on their plates trying to manage what is being thrown at their way. And there was an acknowledgement of that. So yeah, that's right. So that was all good to hear. And by the way, I just want to also say thank you, everybody here, all staff for managing this last item, because I know a lot of time has been spent. And I really appreciate us getting the baggie with I mean, basically, like I could paper City Hall with all the paper that I got, and it weighs a ton, but I really appreciate getting that early so we could look at it because it was overwhelming. Now I'm going to move on to the next, which was director's reports. Do you have any director's reports?
Just a few reports from the city council meeting on March 4th. The smoking permitting ordinance was reintroduced with our assistant city attorney Spansale leading the charge there. It's basically a permitting and
I can jump in on it.
yeah,
This was,
lost my words.
it was a two-parter. So the city, this is only the first reading of the ordinance, so it will come back to the council next. But in the first reading, they adopted an ordinance that would allow essentially 2 hookah establishments in the city. So it amended our flavored tobacco ordinance to allow, under certain circumstances, people to do on-site hookah. And it also created, or would create, if they do adopt it at the next hearing, it would create a tobacco retailer permit program, which would essentially create more restrictions and almost just better regulations regarding those businesses who sell tobacco within the city of Burlingame. So it would help fund more enforcement checks. It would have stiffer penalties if those people are not selling to the right people or if they're violating the law. So there's some things to definitely look at there. And if you're interested, for anyone out there, that will be heard at the next city meeting on Monday.
So it was a total of 2 citywide or just on Broadway? Total citywide 2.
For the hookah, if this comes back and
Oh,
it's adopted the way it is,
Okay.
then yes, it was proposed that there would be 2 allowable anywhere in the city for hookah on-site consumption, not to sell hookah, not to sell flavored tobacco for at-home consumption,
Uh-huh.
but to do it on-site at a restaurant or a hookah lounge.
And was that also the one where they would be required to offer a,
Non-tobacco, non-nicotine.
yeah, that one.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thanks for the explanation.
And then also the other item that had a lot of discussion, and if you see the Daily Journal today, it's also covered, is the filling of the vacancy that's coming up for District 1. I don't know if anybody here lives in District 1, but in any case, there will be an interim appointment until the next election, and then from there, there'll be a regular district election for that. We hadn't really dealt with this a lot in Burlingame, so there was a lot of this discussion of how do we do it, and a lot of decisions to be made, and the council is very good at kind of coming up with a game plan for that.
Good. Which is in the minutes, hopefully, so I can read about it.
Yep.
By the way, I'm ripe pretty soon. I'm expiring. What do you?
So there will be, you are certainly welcome and to reapply. So anytime a commissioner's appointment it runs up, then they are allowed to reapply should they want to. It does also, there is a mandatory invitation to the rest of the community as well for other applicants. There'll be an interview similar to last time and questions, things like that. I think Ruben and I were just talking about today, we're not sure when that gets announced, but in any case, we will, you'll be the first to know.
And so I should continue because we only have one more meeting in March, or do we have two?
So generally, yeah, the incumbent stays until the next person
Oh.
is, so it's usually April-ish,
Okay.
but it kind of, depends on when the appointment is made. We have had people in the past just say, I need to just end now. And then it's the vacancy for a little while.
We have.
But yeah, generally we would prefer to keep the 7 people all the way through and yeah, certainly we appreciate you here on the commission.
Okay, thank you. And finally, are there any future agenda items? Nope. Okay, then we will adjourn at 9:20. Wasn't too bad.
I thought it was going to be 10.
Yeah.
This is the latest one.